and they work just fine. That's a trilene yacht. See?
You always have to change it up, don't you?
I know! Again, find out what works for you.
You're not able to just change out.
So, here we go. I've got a swivel, 200-pound stainless swivel. On the lower end of the swivel, I've got my assist hook, which is, this is a Gamakatsu 4, I believe. And then I've got my split ring connected to bait again. You don't have to do it this way. If you want to use a solid ring right there, go ahead. Works fine. Some people want a little bit of twisting, you know, in case there's a twist in the line, but honestly, here's a nuance for you. If you're using a lot of spinning gear, you might get twist in the line. Maybe use a swivel. Go ahead. Makes sense.
And some of the jigs, if you don't want to use the Shimano jigs like the Williamson jigs, they come with the swivel attached.
They do.
So it works either way. It just depends on how you want to rig it.
Okay. We're almost to, please, sir.
I was watching YouTube the other day, and those jigs, they said that when it was really slow fishing, it said if you slightly bend it, it would agitate the action of the pad. Is that something you do or would do?
Maybe. You can bend a 140-gram jig just a little bit, go for it.
Yeah.
I can bend a 168. It's bending right now. The action of this jig, now we're to where the rubber hits the road. What's going to happen underneath the water? This is called a flat side jig. It's made of lead. It's got a cutesy color scheme on the outside of it. One side is flat, and the other side is oblong. Its tail weighted. More mass towards the tail. It's designed to go down through the water column quickly. In other words, this 168-gram jig, when it's blowing 15 knots, I'm not going to use my small jigs at all. I'm going to use 168s because they go down fast, they will stay below the boat. In 2 or 3 seconds of free spool, I'm down 100 feet at least with a jig like this. So you go down there below the boat. We're going to talk a little bit of technique here for a minute. And we're going to talk about boat setup. Ron?
Yes.
When do I have to kill it? Will you tell me when 5 minutes is ready to go? Give me a warning.
I've got almost 50 minutes.
Perfect.
Would you describe the 3 different types of jigs?
Sizes or?
No, style.
Okay.
So there's a couple different ones and what their uses are.
Okay. First part of the presentation, we're going to talk about flat-sided jigs and similar vertical jigs. They're designed to work vertically through the water column. They are, again, heavy, dense, and they go down through the water column quickly, and they're designed with this kind of action on the way back to the boat. You're walking the dog below the boat, back up through the water column. The fish can't stand it. They got to hit it. They got to eat it. All you're doing is turning that, there's stimulus in their little brains, and you're trying to enact them to believe that this is something that they want to eat. This isn't something they want to eat, is it? Not naturally. But the action of the jig, this sporadic action, and it's not a flutter. So we're going to talk about flutter jigs in a minute. We're going to talk about flat fall jigs that do their work on the way down. This is a jig that's designed with this kind of action. Imagine it coming back to the boat like this, through the water column from deeper water to shallower water. And as you pump and crank and keep that rod loaded, the rod's doing the work, this jig is wildly going back and forth, and an albacore comes and stops what you're doing. That's a whole lot of fun. I love that. Sometimes you get bit on the way down. We talked about that a minute ago. You got your thumb on the spool, fish picks it up on the way down. If the fish are eating lead on the way down, guess what? It's hot. They're hot. You've got a spool below you that is ready to roll. Send it down, send them all down as quickly as you can. This 168 gram is going to pull the hardest of any of the sizes that I use. The heaviest, I would use this kind of a heavier 168 gram jig on a medium heavy trevally. TVC 66MH is the one that I used. Fairly inexpensive. If you're using a medium heavy jigging rod with these smaller 140 and 112 gram jigs, you're probably not producing enough action. You see how much smaller this little jig is here? It's going to pull back on you half as much. Use a lighter rod. For 112 gram jigs, I like to use a medium light trevally. Rick, you use 112s all day, don't you?
112s and 140s is all I use.
Okay. He's not man enough to fish the 160.
I'm still out fishing.
Something like that. Anyway, we do it every time we go out. We just see who can fill the boat up faster.
So you're using a
But we don't teach
rod
score.
for every different jig.
I tune, and this is the part of the presentation that I want you guys to start thinking about your philosophy. If you grab the beach stick off the shelf and you didn't have any fun the first time you tried jigging, it's probably because you mated the wrong rod with the right or the wrong terminal tackle. If you're going to start with lighter jigs, use a medium light rod, a 7-foot medium light. Use your saltwater.
My saltwater are 6.5.
Okay?
And they're medium.
Medium. You ever fish a medium light? Why not?
I like a little
Because he's an
more-
expert.
I like a little more snap in my jigs.
Good. But you can speed that up to catch up to that jig. He keeps his rod loaded the whole time. If you're going to err on the side of getting bit, I want you to err on the side of buying lighter rods and use heavier jigs to start with. Please.
You retrieve it all the way to the boat or just up the column and let it drop in?
If I don't get bit, by the time I'm up to 20 feet, I'll send it back down. Or if there's quite a bit of drift going on, if it's blowing 12 knots out there, I'll pick that up and cast it a few yards up drift to where it comes down below the boat where the strike zone is. And keep it in the water column as much as you can. So lighter jigs, lighter rods, heavier jigs, heavier rods, Rick, and then yourself.
So does the current and the wind, that is a deciding factor for you for what size jig you're going to use?
Yeah, if it's blowing hard, I probably won't fish at 112 at all, except to cast way out ahead of the boat late in the season if they're jumping all over.
Purple fish are on top, late
Yeah.
season are on top,
Who cares?
likely some of them have.
In fact, one of those coffee grinders rolling around, or in fact, both of them probably have 112 gram flat-sided on them. I use these smaller flat-sided jigs to cast as well. So they're designed for vertical use, but because they work on the drop, on the retrieve, 45 degrees, they work all the time, that's what I use. They tend to be the best, in my opinion, in number of hookups, certainly.
So you're describing the right way that's always moving.
Yeah.
So that tells me that the water's always coming up, you're not letting it flow back down until you get to the top.
Let it back down, come up. If you know the fish are deep and you can see them on your fish finder and they're down at 60 feet, come up to 20, free spool again, go back down to 100 and get that jig to roll back up through the water column, send some more chum out there, get those fish warmed up. There are other brands. I started years ago fishing both the Shimano gear. I got a well-used, this is not a vertical jig, but I'm going to talk about it this one. It's a stick jig. While we're at it, there are some Williamson jigs out there that are tail weighted. This is similar, I forget what the name of this is. Speed jig, I think maybe is what it's called. This is a little less on the market as far as money is concerned than any of these Shimanos, but they have the same kind of similar kind of action. This doesn't have a flat side, it's bent slightly, and it's got an oblong shape near the tail of it. It's designed to do this up through the water column. You can fish these a little easier through the water column. You don't have to rip them. And by the way, by ripping, I'm only talking about moving the tip of the rod a couple of feet at most. If you see guys doing this all day, they're overworking themselves or showing off. Maybe you might be having fun too, but
trying to get it right around the boat?
That's the beauty of a flat-sided jig, is you can fish it on 45 degrees, you can fish it vertically, you can throw it out and it'll catch fish right on the drop immediately when you cast it into jumpers. And the beauty of this kind of presentation is your motors are in neutral, maybe they're off, depending upon how your battery setup is configured. You can fish 360 degrees around your boat, if you've got a boat that's configured that way, and fish down to 200 feet below the boat or even more. What's the deepest hookup you get?
I average right around 100.
100 feet below the boat, guys. That's where a lot of our hookups are.
So when you cast out ahead of the boat,
Mhm.
are you, once your lure hits the water, are you putting it in gear and just letting it float, or are you free spooling?
I'm just giving it a little bit of an underhand toss, keeping it in free spool, but I've got my thumb on that spool so it doesn't overrun it. I'm going to let it go down to 100 feet, 150 feet. I usually don't fish below the boat more than 150 feet unless I'm seeing clear, solid marks on my fish finder below 100 feet. We're going to talk about setting your boat up here in a minute, but on this day, the fish were below the thermocline to 60 feet below the boat. That's a pretty easy day. You don't have to go down any farther than 80 or 100 feet on this day to hook up fish. There are other kinds of, please.
So are you fishing until you run out of fish and then moving back and float drifting over them? Or are you tossing bait or dead bait to keep them with you?
Yes,
Okay.
we're not there yet.
Oh, okay.
Remind me to go back there, please, in just a moment. This is a flutter jig. It's 200 grams. It goes down really fast. You got a hook up going. Instead of trolling around, you put the boat in neutral. You got one of these on a fairly heavy, medium heavy rod, and you send it in the water. Now, I mean, the boat isn't even stopped yet. This is down 20, 30, 40 feet. It'll hook up on the drop. You don't fish these like a Shimano flat-sided jig. You fish this kind of like this. You flutter it up and down, move up in the water column, flutter it a little bit more. If you try to fish it like a yo-yo and you bring it back to the boat, it's not going to create a whole lot of action. It's just going to kind of swim back to the boat. Shimano makes a what I call a no-brainer jig. It's called the flat fall. And I like flat falls if they're heavy, and that is at least 160 grams. The 80 grams are fine, but they kind of flutter through the water column. These 160 gram flat falls do this through the water column. Money for an outfit. They're easy to fish. Put them on a coffee grinder, cast them out there, keep it in free spool and wait for the hookup. If you don't get hooked up, you might get bored fishing one of these because they don't work so well on the retreat. They're designed to do their work on the way down through the water column. Then you just rip it back to the boat. If you get hooked up once in a while, that's fine. But again, the beauty of using a flat-sided jig is you can catch them on the way down, you can catch them on the way back, and you can catch them any time you want to. Please.
On the flat falls, is the assist hook on the other end?
Yes, it is. There's two assist hooks, fairly small considering the size of the jigs. And the way the jig is designed is, again, it has a concentric shape and it falls, flat fall, back and forth through the water column with those two assist hooks kind of dangling out there on the other end of the connection where you tie it to your main line. Don't put the reel in gear after you cast it one of these. Keep it in free spool. You want it to do its work at free spool.
So the flat fall jig uses assist hooks on the rear, but the other jig...
These come rigged. No brainer. Absolutely.
Why don't you use the same type of hookup on the other type of jigs?
Because it ruins the action of the jig. If you put some weight on this end of this jig, it will not go up through the water column the way it was designed. Yeah, you'll probably get bit once in a while. Go ahead and use them. Taties work that way. There are other kinds of yo-yo jigs, always have the hook on the tail end of the iron. And they're designed to be fished a specific way. Down south, the guys that caught way more tuna than I can ever imagine, rip that tatey back toward the boat, and as long as they do just a little bit of pulling back on that rod, gives it a tail kick, and most fish can't stand to hit something like that. These are more effective up here, in my opinion. Please.
On the flat fall, if you're using that on a level wind reel, do you thumb it a lot lighter?
I'm going to get backlashes a lot if I'm casting a heavy jig like this out 30, 40, 50 yards away from the boat. Put them on a spinning reel. They're so much easier. In my opinion, there's another use for a spinning reel. They work great. You cast these 150 yards if you really need to with an 8-foot Pro Blue, or even a 7-foot Trevall, or any other. Therese makes an 8-foot spinning rod for casting.
Are the rods different on the flat fall?
I'm sorry.
The hooks are still on the front of the flat ball.
Are the rods different for that flat fall?
You want to use anything that you can cast. Frankly, a long casting. Now we're kind of talking about surface iron. This is not a vertical jig by definition. It's a surface presentation. All you need is a casting rod. You name it. Find any spinning rod that's 6.5 to 8 feet and whip it out there. You'll be just fine. You certainly don't want a really fast tip, because then you're going to lose the ability to whip that jig out there a ways. Any other questions about vertical jigging, the gear itself, the knots we tie?
Put it on your sink,
Pardon?
put any set on or anything, or?
Good idea. I don't do it. Boat's covered in blood, covered in all kinds of, you know what, I don't think I've ever gotten around to dipping my Shimano jigs in herring oil on the way down, but you know what? We've got so much chum going out the side of the boat. At the same time, we've got a chum slick going, and these fish are, if we've done our work, we've done our job, and we've been fishing there for 3 or 4 hours on the drift, we got a slick going. But again, any fish, including an albacore, they don't eat iron in their diet. We're trying to fool them into believing that their natural reaction is to kill this thing that's pissing them off. So we don't care probably so much whether it's got any scent on it. Do it.
Are you going to get into how you deal with sharks?
Well, I will say this about sharks. They're a pain in the butt, but if you're an iron fisherman, they probably don't bother you as much. Iron goes down fast. I don't know of any lazy blue shark that's going to swim fast enough to catch one of these Shimano jigs as they're getting drifted back to the boat. Have you ever been bit by a shark?
Only when I got lazy.
Yeah, when you got slow and
Got
lazy.
slow or leave it tangled in the water. Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing you see is that in the Pacific Northwest, these dogfish, these blue dogs, we call them, get around the boat when you've been chumming a lot. And they scare the fish about usually 20 feet below the boat. And they're all swimming around there. And the albacore's got one eyeball, one of those big eyeballs, looking at the shark. And you're pulling it up toward the shark. Well, the beauty of this kind of setup is you've got 30 or 40 pound top shot with a good set of knots and an assist hook in the corner of the mouth of that fish. Just put 10 pounds of drag on that fish and pull him right past the shark.
You keep chumming?
Absolutely. Keep going. Just keep fishing. In fact, if you got 3 or 4 sharks hanging out, you got some birds flying around the boat, you got all kinds of life, and you got a few fish hanging in the rod holders, you got your own little ecosystem. And any other stray albacore within a few hundred yards of your boat's going to want to come and look what's going on with the party you created. With your own sweat equity, some chum. We'll talk about chum in a little bit. There was a question I was going to get back to. Did I address it yet?
What about the chum
Yeah.
and live bait? No.
Okay,
But you're just about ready to get there.
okay, question? Did you have one?
Yeah, yesterday they talked about hanging, too.
All the time.
What do you mean by hanging?
Okay. I'm lazy. I don't want to pull on a green fish. I hook a fish, put it in the rod holder, back off the drag, walk away. Go hook another fish. Let the fish pull on the boat for a minute. It's going to take its 200-yard run anyway, right? There's nothing you can do, just sit there and watch the line go off your rod. Unless you want to use your thumb, break it off. That's happened on my boat a few times. We get some discussions about how guys want to stop that fish from running, and bing, blew out. Well, usually broke the line and lost the jig for $12.95. So if it's a flat day, or even not so much a flat day, we got into a good school of fish. On my boat, I like to, and this is a good way to transition into setting up your boat to fish this way. Any more questions about gear or iron or philosophy while we're at it?
I have one, so,
Please.
we're on a 26-foot walk around.
Yeah.
Generally, there's only 2 of us on the boat,
Okay.
and so we'll, yeah.
Get some more guys to come fishing with that.
My question
Please.
is, what do you think about that gear particularly?
Buy a couple of guys, if you don't know, a gym membership, and get them some gear, and get them to go fishing. Get them to rip some iron all day. Get 3 or 4 guys on your boat that are committed. Again, like we talked about earlier, you're going to do trolling, go ahead and do it. It's great, it's wonderful. You're going to do this, go all in, get some jigs down there, get some guys doing it all day long. The more you do it, the better you're going to feel about it anyway. A couple of guys, Rick, once in a while on a good day, you and I can fill the boat up by ourselves, can't we?
So the problem with 2 guys is the way Dave was talking about chum. The way we do it, everybody has a job. You got one guy on the iron, everybody's looking out. If there's not chum going underneath the boat, hey, throw a handful. So you throw a handful up above, the chum's going to drift underneath the boat because you're throwing it up drift. But you always want to see at least a couple. If they're behind the boat and you can't see any more chum, it's time to throw 3 or 4 more chums. If you have 2 guys, you can't keep the things going that have to keep going in order to do that all day. You can have a good stop of 3, 4, 5 fish, but you're not going to have that 3-hour stop because there's not enough guys to do all the
Needs
jobs.
more horsepower on board, I think.
So if you want to do the 3, 4, 5 fish stop, that's cool. But for most guys, 3, 4, 5 fish, that's a good 20 or 30 minutes.
This photo was taken after we were fishing with the motor off for 3 or 4 hours. We drifted for 4 or 5 miles, and I was just starting back up, and there were this many fish underneath the boat. We'd been fishing, I don't remember who was on the boat that day, I'm sure there was. But 2 well-trained,
You can
me
do
and
it with-
Jimmy Woo can do
you
it
can do it with
together.
3.
Me and, yeah. But if you've got experienced jigging fishermen on your boat, and you can rely on 1 or 2 of them, you can make it go. The deal is you want to be able to fish as long as you can on the drift. Hook fish after fish after fish. Put 2 or 3 in the rod holder. I know it's like a home run hitting for the fence. You might lose one once in a while. But the more fish that you get underneath your boat, the more fish are going to come and check you out.
You're creating that ecosystem underneath your boat, and with the chum, you keep, hey, the feeding light's still on underneath your boat. Why don't you come out and check out the other guys, and you'll get pictures like that. Or that's probably, some of those are probably blue sharks, but almost all of the streaking fish you'll see on that, they're all tuna, and they're all crisscrossed underneath your boat, deep enough that you can't see them, but your jigs will find them.
For efficiency, are you guys dealing with drone fish? If you look at fish, are you,
I try not to let anybody that's hot get out of the game. Fish hits the deck, you get your gear right back in the water. As you're dealing with 1 fish or 2 fish with 1 hand, you reach down and lead that fish. Try to, we don't have time to spare guys if you're hot. If you got 4 guys on your boat, and 1 guy's kind of tired, needs a sandwich, hey, let him clean up the deck. But
He's the gaff guy, the bleach slush guy, or the throw the handful of chum guy.
this is intense fishing. When the fish are hot, when the fish want your stuff, there's no time for a sandwich, there's no time for a siesta. You gotta kill them.
How much chum do you take on a day?
At least 20 pounds minimum. So we're going to talk about setting up the boat now. It's a great time to kind of segue into this. We've got, Ron, how many minutes?
25 minutes.
How many?
25.
Perfect. Okay, so on my boat, I got a little 24-foot North River. It's got a big cockpit on it because the top is shortened just a little bit. I got 7 or 8 feet of cockpit, and I've got 7 Bernwin lay flat rod holders all the way around my cockpit. So we can actually, we do it once in a while, hang 6 fish around that boat. They begin to do this. So you grab one as you're fishing over here, and you go underneath that one and bring that fish over here. But you have eyes in the back of your head. Everybody has eyes in the back of their head. If your boat is set up with the flush-mounted rod holders, you might have a little trouble hanging a bunch of fish because you're probably going to break the tip off if it's the wrong direction. So get some lay-flat rod holders. Get some kind of an insert you can put into those flush-mounted rod holders. What else?
So if you have the vertical rod holders and you want to hang fish, do not hang vertical fish, hang fish that are outside. Let them chill out outside so they're not interfering with your spread and you can deal with them when they're not straight underneath your boat. When that fish becomes a problem, now it's time to reel that fish in. But if you can keep them out away from the boat while you're still hooking more fish, keep hooking more fish.
You got a fish
Let that rod hang out.
run out 45 degrees away from the back of the boat. That's a happy fish. Leave it out. Yeah, he's out there. He's a decoy. You know, you all got decoys, right? He's trouble.
How deep do you hang your?
Oh, usually you hook them between 50 or 60 feet down, and they run a couple of 100 feet. Leave them down there. There you go. Don't let them spool up, run your spool off. And you don't want them, causing all kinds of, especially if you've got a buddy boat that you're drifting there next to. You got to be careful there. So find a way to create a school underneath your boat. The sense of a school, a little mini ecosystem, or however you want to explain it. Get some rod holders that lay flat. The Scotty strikers work fine. I think that as long as you don't hook the fish, lock down the drag, and then set it in the rod holder, and you can have trouble. Back the drag off a little bit, let that fish have some drag, okay? Because it's gonna, especially when it gets its head turned away from you, because they don't have a swivel, they're just gonna swim away. Please, your question?
How much box of bait would you take with you on a day?
At least 20 pounds. I buy the IQF anchovies in those little white 20-pound boxes, and I've almost always got a half a box left over from the last trip, so 30 pounds. And on a big day, we'll use 2 boxes. It's only 40 bucks. Fuel's cheap these days. Buy some bait. Invest in this. If you've got chum, you can do this. If you don't have chum, you waste your time. Leave your jigging gear home if you don't have any chum. If you want to chunk up shad, you want to chunk up whatever you want to chunk up, that's all right. But IQF anchovies, in my opinion, because they're readily available, you can walk into almost any port up and down the Oregon coast. You can get them in Portland as well, and they work well. They're frozen individually. Snip them up into pieces, toss them out, updrift of the boat, in small handfuls, continuously. Mike Jesterson believes in less chum than I do. I believe in more chum. I believe in more chum until the fish stop biting, and here's an important issue. If you're overfeeding the fish and you got fish underneath the boat, 20 or 30 of them down there, and you can't get bit, slow down your chum and throw one piece to the same spot again and again, and it'll turn on, it'll reduce the supply. Fish are all down there, all hungry. Spot, chum, get your school hot again, and then you can start the party again. And if they're absolutely not interested, pick up, throw somewhere else.
Some people pull a bait after they come.
A chum slick? You're going to attract more sharks. If you just run scent behind your boat, Nothing wrong with it, but chunked up chunked up anchovies are, in my opinion, the best bait to use, because when they're still half frozen and chunked up, they sink below the boat. If you're throwing your anchovies out there and they float, the birds are eating them, you're wasting your time, for the most part.
That was my question, pod versus unpod.
Keep them frozen as long as you can. Throw some salt on them, toughen them up so they don't get all mushy. What I do on my boat is I keep the cockpit totally clean. I don't have any kill bags back there. All the kill bags are up in near the cabin. The fish box, for the most part, is closed unless we're putting fish in there. We've got one cooler kind of running around the cockpit, and that's the cute little igloo that has chum in it. And we all grab out of that. You know, the thing about a jigging boat is guys are moving around constantly. We don't have time to be stepping over kill bags or 164 coolers in the cockpit of your boat. I recommend that you clear all that stuff out of your boat, out of the cockpit, so you guys can move around. If you've done your work and you're hooking 3, 4, 5 fish every 10, 15 minutes, you're breaking a few off, you're having some tangles, you're having a ball. Last thing you want to do is have somebody trip over something and crack their head against the side of the boat and y'all got to go home.
A little additional clarity. Frozen versus unthrilled, one will stay on top and one will sink.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I think the frozen stuff sinks better. A whole anchovy frozen is going to float for a little while and eventually will go down, but if you cut them in chunks, they'll sink almost immediately.
Some squid or any other?
Sure, whatever you've got, as long as it's soft. You've got some old shad that you use, you know. Bottom line is speed and simplicity. You buy it in 20-pound boxes, it comes frozen, comes right out of the fish box, and you're ready to fish.
Scissors are your friend in that case. Just grab a handful and start with the big heavy-duty scissors until you run out and grab another handful. You probably want 5 to 10 pounds at a time in your cooler, and when you start to run low, it's, hey, we're running low, so I'm going to grab the scissors again. And just you want to keep the big chunks relatively small, so 1 inch by 1 inch square. You know, you're not trying to throw a whole fish out there.
So we talked about the way your boat is set up. How many of us fish deep, kind of deep draft fiberglass boats between 20 and 26 feet? The majority of us. How many of us have aluminum boats?